There you go.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Hello, and I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. It is 1 p.m. and my goodness, we're live already. It's incredible. Anyway, on a digital platform. We have a handful of folks here today. We have myself, Liz Mealy, Randy Allison, and Eric Biter. We are the members of the Finance Committee. I think I saw John Mackey back there in the cheap seats as well from City Council. And we have Joe Pavlak, Chris Black, Janice Frank, Skip Memmy, Kayla Drummond, and saw the mayor on here somewhere as well. Excuse me, Fire Chief Ongst and Adam Winder, a handful of folks here from the administration, and a couple of guests, including Denny Lohner. And we're excited to have everyone here today. Correct my memory, maybe I'm not looking at the most recent copy of the Finance Committee agenda. Mr. Lohner, an interview with you is first on the agenda. Randy, is that first on your copy?
It was added, yes.
Okay, yeah.
I just assumed we'd put it first anyhow.
Yeah, I remembered seeing it, but it's not on the copy I'm looking at on Dropbox.
Yeah.
And then, okay. So item 1 then on today's agenda is just talking to Mr. Lohner a little bit about an appointment to the Brandon Park Commission. Mayor Slaughter, would you like to lead that off?
Sure. Good afternoon, Councilman Mealy, members of the Finance Committee. With us here today, we do have Mr. Denny Lohner, who has been in the Williamsport area and involved in a number of various things throughout the years. And he recently approached me about joining the Brandon Park Commission and Shade Tree Commission, which of course comes along with that. And so, you know, obviously, Denny lives right there, very, very close to Brandon Park, about a block north of it. And given that he's been very involved with recreation and athletics, other items throughout the years, I was happy that he's interested in volunteering his time to the Brandon Park Commission, the Shade Tree Commission, obviously then he wrote his letter. And he's here today for consideration from City Council. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Other members of the Finance Committee, what do you have to say to Mr. Lohner? I guess actually, Mr. Lohner, first I should open up, and they probably let you know this, but this is kind of an interview process that we've set up for committee appointments. There's nothing, we won't take a vote in the Finance Committee. That'll happen in front of the full body of council, but this is just sort of an initial opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit. Those of us who don't already know you, of course, and then we will represent, the conversation we have with you to the full body of council. That means that you don't need to attend that meeting, but after our vote on Thursday, you'll be officially a member of the Brandon Park Commission and the Shade Tree Commission. Yeah, really, this is just a conversation, and when it's over, there won't be any sort of official action taken by the committee. Randy and Eric, do you have any thing you wanted to discuss with Mr. Lohner aside from the baseball players, Randy?
Yeah, actually, no, Denny's a great guy. He has the same affinity for Brandon Park that goes way back, like all of us old timers or youngers that have used it a lot, and our kids used it, and we realized the value of the park, and Denny's one of those people who'll be a great addition to the board. I think it's a strong team, and I think he makes it stronger, and I'm just pleased that he is volunteering to step into that place. So welcome aboard, Denny.
Thank you.
Eric, anything you'd like to offer?
Randy said it all. I appreciate his willingness to get involved and his continued willingness to be a member of the community that's actively involved with everything from Little League Baseball and you name it. You've been part of it over the years.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the only thing that I would add to that, Mr. We're always grateful to find somebody who's not just willing, but actively interested in taking part of any of our boards and commissions. And this is a very important one. I will say that I think actually the more important role, as far as I'm concerned, the Brandon Park Commission is exceptionally important. Brandon Park being probably our most exceptional park in the city. We have a number of large parks, but Brandon's really a beautiful one and has, you know, gorgeous trees, excellent passive recreation, a lot of opportunities for, you know, family recreation. It's really a neat park. But the Shade Tree Commission is also an exceptionally important thing to the city of Williamsport. And it's something that we haven't been paying a lot of attention to over maybe the last decade or 15 years. But Williamsport's shade trees have taken a real hit with some of the wild weather we've had in the last couple of years. And I think we need to be putting some thought, and those folks that we're appointing to the Shade Tree Commission particularly need to be concentrating on trying to improve our urban canopy and trying to strengthen our shade tree ordinances to protect our existing shade trees from damage when we pave roads, et cetera, et cetera. So I would ask that as a member of both commissions, you take the work of both of them seriously. And I guess I would further ask what specific, if you live close to Brandon Park, what's your kind of favorite way to recreate there?
Mostly right now we take our grandkids there, but I've been to the homemade days, other venues. I think Brandon Park's one of the tremendous assets for the city, and I just would like to see that continue to be a great place for the families to go.
I think that's absolutely true. And the mayor went over with you the meeting schedule and the obligations, I suppose, of the Brandon Park Commission.
Yes.
And I suppose Randy could probably double down on that, since I believe Randy's wife serves on the Brandon Park Commission too. But anyway, it's a nice group of people you'll be joining, and they've put in a lot of good work over the last couple of years.
I look forward to working with them.
Okay. Are there any other points from anybody else, either on council or on this meeting? All right.
John Mackey's got his hand up.
Oh, Matt, go for it. Sorry, this platform doesn't make it easy for me to see. Don, and go for it. And wait. Okay.
Yeah, I have my virtual hand up, not my real hands up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just while I'm here, since I am here and I am in the chief seats, I would love to hear, Denny, your thoughts. I mean, you've already spoke about Brandon Park and what it means to you living in the neighborhood, but could you speak to the baseball facilities and your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of talk about redoing the fields. I coached there years ago. I actually played Legion ball on the big field, and then I coached on the big field. I would really like to see them come back and give those kids in that area a closer place for them to play, rather than having to go so far away. So I would actually, I worked on those fields a few years ago, cutting the grass and helping out down there while I could. So I would like to really see those fields come back and give the kids and more kids the opportunity to play closer to home.
Got it. And Mr. Lohner, I think is it your son-in-law who runs the Williamsport Area Little League?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, that's some commendable effort that they've been, it's a huge amount of work, and they've, I mean, not just the ball fields at Brandon, but just the entire league. So they do a really remarkable job. But excellent. Yeah, I think certainly ball fields within the city would provide closer access for Williamsport City kids who are playing ball. All right. there's another hand up, Chris Black.
No, it's the otter.
What is that? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
don't worry about that.
Okay.
Honorary, that's something unrelated altogether.
Okay, but it always has its hand up.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So it's eager to participate. We'll have to welcome it sometime. Yeah, I thought, isn't that some sort of device? All right. Okay. Then if there are no other questions out there, I will, I'll close the discussion with Mr. Lohner. Mr. Lohner, like I said, you're welcome to attend the council meeting on Thursday, but you don't need to. The finance committee will represent our discussion to the full body of council, and I don't anticipate there being any additional questions unless anyone else on council has heard any questions from other members that I have not. Hearing nothing, then I think we'll move on to item number 2 here.
Liz, I'd just like to say, I appreciate everybody's time on this and at least getting to see who I am and know who I am.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your willingness to serve on the Brandon Park Commission. And I think realistically speaking, we try to stay in touch with our committees and commissions. Sometimes it's easier than others, but we'll hope to be to kind of hear updates from you and other members of the commission, and to keep an eye on the work going on there. And we will treasure, I think, your very informed opinion on the work being done in the park when you're a member of the commission. Thank you, Mr. Lohner, for joining us today. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to item number 2 then, and guys, you will excuse me if I'm not if I'm deviating at all from the final agenda, because the one I'm running with is on Dropbox. And so okay, item number 2 then, an ordinance adopting the American Rescue Plan budget, first reading. Is Adam Yoder here?
Yes.
I am. How are you?
Adam, sorry, I missed you when you arrived.
I got in late. It's all good.
Yeah. Okay. What can you tell us then about this ordinance?
Certainly. So good afternoon, everyone. So what this is, it's an ordinance adopting a budget for our American Rescue Plan funding that we have received or are going to receive later this year in a second tranche. So in our last meeting, in our last work session that we had, there was a consensus to, I think, start to wrap this process up, at least initially, and get some of a number of this money allocated to some consistent either ideas or projects that we have been throwing back and forth out there. And so this ordinance and this budget reflects that. So what I did was I reached out to all members of council, the mayor, our city treasurer, and city controller, so all 10 elected officials in the city. And they all compiled an individual budget, as you'll see at the back end of the document, identifying 1, the projects that they'd like to see funded, but 2, how much they'd like to throw at each one. I heard from everybody but the city controller, and she's got a lot going on that, and so it's perfectly understandable that we didn't. But so you'll see those at the back end, and what I did was, if you look at the budget that is compiled, you'll see all the individual categories. You'll see the common projects that between the mayor, treasurer, and all members of council that they all wanted to see. And most of these we've really talked about publicly anyway. I took the average amount per project that everybody wanted to put towards each individual project, and that average is what is reflected in the individual allocation for each project. Again, it's a starting point as we look to close this I think initial allocation process up. I don't think that this is necessarily final. I'm sure that we, as we go through 2 readings, we'll have either changes that we want to see with projects that are listed there now, as well as maybe there are other projects that other people had that other members didn't think of, that they want, that we discuss and we come to a consensus that we want to fund also, we can add those there as well. But this is really a starting point, and that was kind of the method of the madness of putting this together to get to a starting point. And the other thing that I'll point out, if you look at the total amount from a category perspective, that number is also pretty close to the average total category from the group as well. So not only are the individual line item allocations that are there now, quote unquote, average consensus numbers to start off, but each individual category is close, within probably $300,000 to $500,000. Okay. So, and then the other one thing that I will note, you will notice under fiscal relief that there is a future projects reserve line item of 2.418017,801. Okay. That was the number. I used that number to, one, even out the budget, and two, that was the one category where, from a category perspective, we were really low compared to the average and what was the average consensus of just allocating to the total. So that got us closest to that. But that's really just a mechanism to balance this out as we close up this process. So some backstory to it. I'm happy to answer any questions. If there's any clarifications that are needed on anything, I'm happy to address that as well. But like I said, this is just a first pass as we go through a couple of readings to kind of close this process out, and a starting point that reflects a rough consensus of everybody. Then we can certainly make changes, add, subtract as we deem necessary for the next couple meetings.
Sounds good, Adam. Thanks. Just one quick question. I mean, obviously the actual document we're voting on is just the ordinance assigning specific amounts to specific categories. To what extent, and this might be a better question for a solicitor, I know we discussed running this like a capital budget, which would mean that the line items within your American Rescue Plan budget would also be, to a certain extent, fixed and promised out. Are those incorporated in the ordinance? Are they empowered by the ordinance, so to speak, or are they simply numbers that we're not particularly voting on Thursday, I guess is my question.
Yeah, certainly. So in putting this together, I mimicked the process of capital budget. So the ordinance reads just like the capital budget does, and then including the budget that you have in there in the ordinance, it's the exact same process. So I guess to answer your question, are we listing out in the actual piece of legislation, the ordinance itself, individual projects? No, we are not. We are describing the allocation on a category level, fiscal relief, economic development, and so on.
Right.
But that is not atypical compared to the capital budget process, so to speak. I'd have to refer back to, the ordinance that we use for the general fund. I think that one's more detailed than our capital budget, but I do think that's also similar. I can refer back to that, but
I guess what I'm thinking is, the wording of the ordinance says the parts and sections of the budget documents per se grant period attached here to are therefore incorporated by reference, which would indicate to me that we are effectively voting also on the, on the budget.
I get what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So no, they're not listed on the ordinance itself, but they're referred to as you're saying. So yes, I mean that was the intent.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we are incorporating both those documents and and these totals.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you were getting at. My bad.
Yeah. I don't know. I effectively answered my own question. I was just trying to figure out whether solicitor's perspective that held water or whether it did. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I had Norm look at this and he was good with it. I mean, we can clarify that more on Thursday when he's there, but he did review this and was okay with it.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry to break in. Randy and Eric, what questions do you have?
I don't have any questions, Adam. Thank you for putting all the work in on this. I think it's, like you said, a starting point. It's a good way to synthesize the ideas and memorialize them and down on paper, so that it really put it together in a comprehensive way that it's a lot easier to digest than just writing, scribbling down on our note paper and trying to keep track that way. Yeah, and obviously, I'm sure we're gonna be, I'm not gonna say surprised, but enlightened as we go on and find out, well, maybe we're gonna have to make some shifts, because this isn't happening and that is happening. And, we have the ability to do that within this ordinance. So I think it'll work. So yeah, I don't have any particular questions. I do like some of the, as you mentioned, added ideas that are in there that I think merit our attention and so forth. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about it right now.
Okay. Thanks, Randy. Eric, any other comments?
I just want to make sure that we have an effective way to pivot should we run into any issues down the road with the allocations. And is this the most effective way for us to do that? Just looking through the budget that everybody put together, one of the things that jumps out to me that makes me question that ability is the splash pads. That's been something that John Sanders has been sending us information on. Cost estimates have been given out, and those estimates, I believe, are all in the $580,000 range. And looking at the budget, we only have $500,000 allocated for that. So is it easy then to get the money from, is it the capital budget or general fund to transfer over to this particular line item then in the future? So that's where my main concern comes as I look at these numbers.
I think well, Adam, do you want to answer that question or should I?
I'm happy to speak to it, certainly. So yeah, Eric, I certainly understand that, what I would anticipate happening and, what typically happens when you're talking about, even if it's from the general fund, we would have a transfer process, right? And so what that entails is if, so for example, let's say that we wanted to take so much amount of money from contingency and put it into that project, we would go through a transfer process over 2 readings and do that. We should talk with Norm about specifically if this is okay, but I don't think I think we could also, if there's a particular project that for some reason was running over and when we knew that it was only going to be over a finite amount of money, I would think we might be able to simply pull money, draw that down out of that category specifically through a simple resolution process also, and just through that resolution process linking that. So there's a couple of mechanisms that we could do, but the thing that I would also note, I think if we get into that situation, I suspect that we're going to identify that and know that well ahead of time before that money would be needed. When we're talking about our city engineer and the administration managing the day-to-day, when you talk about just good management practices and project management of any of these projects, I would suspect that we will know well in advance, hey, we're going to run into something, it's a number of months down the line, but here's what it's going to be. We can transfer that money well in advance so that we're not hindering anything either, if that makes sense, Eric.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And these projects, I think they're all wonderful and they deserve our attention. But as we look at the splash pad, that's a good one. And as you were talking, I started to think a little bit more about Brandon Park in general. When I spent time there with Mr. Fox and Mr. Deemer, looking at that drainage system, that could really run up costs quite a bit. Should we have issues with that? So just making sure that we're not leaving things sit because they have to go through an extensive process just to get the ball rolling a little bit farther forward. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, certainly, Eric. And the other thing too, I do think if we would run into a situation like that, I think that we would want to know. And while it might be a bit of a longer process, I do think using this process enables council specifically to be the watchdog that it needs to be when it comes to whether it's general fund money, capital budget, or in this case, American Rescue Plan funding. This creates a accountability mechanism to ensure that we're able to vet these properly if issues come up, that kind of thing. So I certainly completely agreed, but there's some added benefit to it from at least my opinion.
Agreed.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Yoder and I differ on this point. So it seemed to me like a resolution process was a wiser idea, but the ordinance process definitely ordains things perhaps slightly more, but it has the potential to slow things down. We did learn from Norm Lubin at the last city council meeting that when one's dealing with budgetary ordinances, that most ordinances also have 20 days to final enactment after the second reading. So you've got 1 week, 2 weeks, and then 20 days after that. But that doesn't apply to budgetary ordinances. So it would take effect after the second reading in front of council, whenever that would occur. So the lengthiest wait I think you would be looking at to transfer funding would be about 7 weeks, probably, if you happen to catch us in that period. And when we take a little
or whatever.
August. What's that?
In August, I think it is.
Yeah. So you'd need to have the material submitted by the Friday before to be voted on by the first Thursday, and then there'd be another reading. Actually, no. So you're still only looking at maybe 3 or 4. Yeah. So it's not terrible.
No, not at all.
So, but yeah, it's a way of dealing with it that I think provides some accountability and requires a bit of thought, I suppose. And I'm guessing that's probably a positive thing. Okay. Did you have other questions, Mr. Ryder?
I do not.
Okay.
Just, I agree with you, Liz, on that wholeheartedly. I wanted, or I favored the resolution process, but and when Norm said we didn't have that extra weight, it didn't seem like there's a whole lot of difference there.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit extra paperwork, but with the exception,
Yeah.
it's not that much more onerous, right? Yeah, so that's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, really. And Mr. Yoder, I know that we sort of just evened out everyone's votes, but this must have truly been a human's effort here. Not so much the not so much the looking at what everybody wanted to put money into and all that stuff, but just making it come out to the number, to the actual allocation. I think must have taken some doing.
Not really. I mean, in all honesty, I probably put an hour into this, in all honesty. I mean, it wasn't super crazy. In all honesty, the concerning thing was just like, all right, well, I mean, I got to put some stuff somewhere to even this out. Let's hope that they're okay with this, with that couple million and the fiscal bucket. But no, it wasn't too bad. Excel's a very good tool. And fortunately, I've got a lot of experience with it, so it wasn't too bad at all. Yeah. I would also, I mean, again, this was a group effort, between all 7 members of us on council and in the administration. I mean, each one of you put together something to put in. I was really just a conduit for this. I mean, this, and I'd commend council specifically. We've had a handful of good lengthy discussions on, I think, the merits of individual projects and what have you. This is just the fruit of that. It's been a long, but I think a valuable process. And I would commend everybody. We've all shared some good ideas. We've all had some, I think, thoughtful dialogue and debate on ideas. But in the end, we've really been in the front seat and driving this decision-making process. And this is just the fruits of that. So
good. Yeah, no, I mean, we're getting there, I guess.
Yep. Yes, we're getting there. Absolutely. And it's good to see.
Yeah. For the benefit of the general public, and I actually didn't tot up the numbers here, but we are still looking at something on the order of about $8 or $10 million allocated into various categories, but not actually allocated to any specific item yet. Correct, Mr. Yoder?
Yeah, give me a second. I can give you a quick number if you like.
Yeah, I was just attempting to add it up and then in my head, and that seemed to be like it was going to take longer than I wanted it to.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of whenever you talk about future projects reserved or contingency, there's a decent amount of money that is in those categories, but it's really being saved for quote unquote a rainy day. You're looking at $7.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
And a big chunk of that is that number in fiscal relief that, like I said, I use that to get us close to the consensus or to the average for the category as a whole. But that's also where I just balanced out everything too. So,
right.
Yep.
And so to call out, I guess, a handful of items, we're obviously taking a chunk of the money for lost revenue, which I think we all agree will be necessary utilization. A large chunk of the money is going into economic development. One thing that I would have liked to see called out there, but don't currently, is the economic development consultant that I think we will need in place to effectively utilize that money. And then got a good chunk of money going into the levy and another good chunk going into Graphius Run, an allocation for the water authority as they undertake restructuring within the city and associated infrastructure costs, not restructuring, but infrastructure costs related to water and then street repair after the water's run. We've got the ball fields in Brandon Park, splash pads in Shaw Park. I did see a handful of people whose budgets segregated out Shaw Park and the splash pads, something that I think we should be considering. But obviously there's a substantial contingency yet in recreation. And then not as much contingency in some of our other categories, or future projects. But the fire apparatus number is the one that I think will almost immediately have bearing. Mr. Yoder, 1.2 seems to be the consensus among the administration and council.
Correct. And something else, you're looking at even numbers throughout each of these categories. Whenever you go through and average everything out, they're not even numbers. So just right. For full transparency, I rounded each number up to either to the closest 100,000 or 50,000 roughly, depending on where it was at, just so it was even and we're not dealing with cents and stuff. But right, yes, right. That is correct.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a nice number. I've heard everything. I've run into people who think we should allocate the full 3.2. And right. So yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily seem to be the will of the administration, since I didn't see that in the mayor's budget. But okay. All right. Then I'm still personally struggling a little bit with the baseball field allocation in this budget. I'm not sure which way I'll vote on this ordinance in committee. I apologize for not having made that decision yet, guys, but still sort of. But is there any further discussion from anyone else out there? I'm flicking through to see if I see any raised hands. We have, of course, Mr. Yoder, the concurrence of the administration on this budget, as evidenced by their participation in the construction of it, but have we discussed it with them since then?
No, I have not. I figured between finance and 2 readings, we had a couple of opportunities to have some good but public dialogue on that. So I have not. They were able to look through it after submission at the end of the week, and I figured through committee and 2 readings we'd have some good discussion there.
Got it. Mayor Slaughter, what are you thinking about this?
Yeah, the administration, like Councilman Yoder said, we're still looking through it. We got it on Friday, so we're reviewing it, looking over it, and plan to have some conversation on Thursday evening between the full body council and administration. So yes, we still continue to review it as well, Councilwoman Millie.
Got it. I admittedly, Mayor Slaughter, we do have 2 readings, but if the administration was going to propose making any substantial changes to the budget, I think it would be wise if we got those before this Thursday. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Not that we couldn't change it on second reading, but it would seem better to at least begin having those discussions on Thursday, and to have them intelligently, we would need to have something from the administration before Thursday's meeting. But yeah, and and I would assume that all of us, have items on here that we are okay with, but not exactly excited about, and other things that we're wildly excited about. That kind of is how it works in a process like this. And then several things, at least in my case, and I think in everyone's from glancing down through, that didn't make the master list that one or 2 of us think are very important. And that's how it goes. Anyway, any other comments from the administration or anyone else in the meeting? And if you're raising your hand, it's really better to raise your voice, folks. But I'll keep flicking through, trying to make sure I see raised hand.
Looks like Joe Pavlak has this.
Hey, Pavlak. What would you would you like to say, man? Oh, no? Hey, Joe.
No, I don't have anything.
Oh, okay. Well, we were hoping you would, Joe. No, but in all honesty, it would be nice at some point to hear from the finance department, I think, on their thoughts, both on the process and on the allocation. So Joe, if you have any thoughts on it for Thursday, or if you want to reach out to me and chat about it sometime in the meantime, that'd be great. But okay, hearing no other comments, I guess I'll take a motion, guys.
I'll make a motion. We pass it to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, I'll go with it for now. I'm still thinking.
It's all right,
I'm still
Liz.
thinking too. Yeah, this is
Understood. It's okay.
I'm sorry. I just did Valentine's Day last night. I am not in a position to be making decisions today. So, everything's a little kind of beyond me today. Sorry, guys. All right. Item number 3 on the agenda: a resolution to amend resolution. Hang on. 8880. Mayor Slaughter. This was my favorite item in this week's council packet, by the way.
Yes, good afternoon again, Councilwoman Muley, members of the Finance Committee. What you have before you is a resolution to amend resolution number 8880, which is simply a formality. This original resolution was passed on April 11th, 2019, and it deals with a lease agreement we have with M&T Bank related to a 2019 Chevy Tahoe command vehicle for the fire department. The original documents did not receive all of the signatures, and therefore M&T did not receive the original documents with the signatures at that time. Since the administration has changed, we're not able to get those original signatures. And so working with Norm Lubin and Austin White, our solicitors, their recommendation was to just do a new resolution to amend it which would then authorize the current city officials to execute the previously approved agreement, which means nothing more than it would give us the ability to sign the documents and then in turn send that to M&T Bank, the originals, so they have it for their files. It does not change anything related to the finances. We actually have already made 2 payments on these vehicles, and the third and final payment will take place this year. So it doesn't change anything related to the original agreement, doesn't change anything financially. And then at that point, actually after this year, we are able to buy it out for $1. This was reviewed in public safety this morning as well, passed on to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. And again, it changes absolutely nothing regarding the original amendment, original resolution, other than allowing the current officials to sign it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Slaughter. Yeah, this seems to have pretty much no fiscal impact on the city of Williamsport, aside from, of course, the original decision-making on the lease agreement. Randy, Eric, do you have any further questions on this?
No, seems pretty simple, just clearing up their paperwork.
Yeah, I think
Paperwork and then.
One of those awkward things that has to come back in front of a public meeting, despite the fact that there's really nothing in particular to it. If I hear no further questions or comments, I'll take a motion.
Sorry, if I could just jump in here real quick.
Oh, yes, Mackie, please. Sorry. What would you like?
Sure. Yeah, squeaky wheel here. Again, I brought this up before, and I'll probably keep bringing it up. This is a prime example of, maybe us looking at a way of streamlining our process here. This was reviewed in public safety, and while it may or may not have a financial impact on the city, I'm not sure why this now also has to go through the finance committee. I understand there's a way we've always done things.
Yeah. I don't think.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring it up.
No,
What's that?
I'm not really sure.
that was the old way.
Yeah.
Well, at any rate, this is just an example.
It might have
We
just
did
been-
try to streamline.
Yeah.
You're breaking up, Liz, for some reason.
Yeah, sorry, Liz. Okay.
Oh, you moved, John.
Anyway, I feel like maybe this warrants just at some point a further discussion on when we are voting or approving something that has a financial impact on the city, that it doesn't necessarily always have to come through the finance committee per se. And I understand that's how it's always been done, but we're changing things up in terms of limited courtesy to the floor, that sort of thing. So anyway, just something to put out there again, and I think this is a good example of that.
And there was one other item this morning that Councilman Mackey asked for, and that was an updated list of current leased vehicles and where we stand financially with those, both from the fire department and the police department. So Chief Snyder and Chief Unks were both on the meeting this morning. And so for the finance committee's knowledge, we are going to get that to you. We're going to try our best to get that before Thursday's meeting, an updated list of those vehicles.
Thank you. I think we asked for one of those a while ago.
Possibly, but we'll have that to you.
That'd be great.
Councilman Miller, you're muted. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I was wondering if I was still breaking up, but apparently not. I'm just muted. It would be good to get that across the board, Derek. I'm assuming Streets and Parks also has leased vehicles.
I'm not sure where all they have them at this point, but yes, whatever vehicles across the board, we'll get those codes, Streets and Parks, each department. So yeah, we'll get you a comprehensive list. Yes.
It would probably also, this does not need to happen by Thursday, but might also be a benefit, at least to our newest council member, and perhaps to several sitting council members, because I don't know that we've done this in a while, to look at all city debt. Those leased vehicles obviously comprise a small portion of that, but the city does have other outstanding debt in other quantities. And I'll confess that at this point, even I'm not entirely certain where we stand with some of those, the larger chunks of debt that we've been paying down, but they're 30-year debt, so it's going to be a while before we've paid them off. It probably would be, if we could perhaps at an upcoming finance meeting 2 weeks out or 4 weeks out, kind of just have a quick look over existing city debt, and discuss where we're at with it, what our existing payments are, all of that. I think it would be beneficial. Councilman Biter, I don't know if you would appreciate that or not. But I think it would benefit me, and I've been here for most of the debt, whereas you have not. So
it would present a very clear picture, because there's a lot of information that gets thrown out that if you haven't been around for a number of years, you're very clueless as to where you stand. So it would be very appreciated.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
So Mayor Slaughter, like I said, I don't know, that's not really a document that you turn around on a dime, but I'm guessing that it's out there in one piece of information, one digital file someplace, and it would be good, I think, to have it, and for those of us who are newer to council to be able to review it and understand a little better the fiscal commitments the city has out there.
Sure. Yep, and Joe Pavlak's now, so yep, we can get together and get that for you, for you all.
John Mackey, to your point, I am not certain why this item is on this item has no fiscal impact, so I'm not sure why this item is on our agenda. I can only assume that perhaps it was a bureaucratic snafu. But we're reviewing it now. and that's just how it goes. But yeah, I would agree. I would maintain that I think that that things with financial impact, certainly anything with an estimable quantity of financial impact, should go before the finance committee for review. But I don't think that this item fits into that category. And I'm not quite certain how we feel. We can perhaps apply this discussion to the upcoming item on our agenda related to recreation software. I'm glad that that's coming before the finance committee. That perhaps is such a minor commitment that it could have gone maybe to public works, but I'm not really certain where recreation items necessarily go for approval on a regular. So anyway, does anybody else have any further comments around this item? Hearing none, I would take a motion, please.
I'd like to pass this to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Well, that was longer than I expected to spend on that one. All right. But a good discussion, guys. So thank you. Item number 3, a resolution authorizing the execution of a purchase agreement with Glick Fire Equipment Company for the purchase of fire apparatus. Honks?
Thank you, members of council. Before you is the resolution. Basically, it's an addendum or an adjustment to the previously approved resolution from December 16th. So, and that's the purchase agreement was signed by myself. And I understand that I was not supposed to be doing that. So we need to get the purchase agreement signed by the mayor, the controller, and the city clerk then. So that's basically what this is for the full payment of the 3.2 million. I understand that there was a lot of misunderstandings between myself and the finance committee, the city council regarding this. I apologize. It was my understanding that the council was kept abreast of the changes that were made. So we are now in a position where we're looking at purchasing 2 new engines and an aerial. And we have Tom Whitmoyer and Ralph Rearig also from, I'm Not sure which ones they're from, whether they're from Pierce Financial or from PNC, that are here to answer questions regarding the financing portion of it. So I had sent along a packet, a small packet with different options. Option one, obviously, was the 100% ARPA funding. Option two was the 2.5 million funded by ARPA and 700,000 from CDBG. And then option three was 1.5 million ARPA funded, 700 CDBG, and 1 million financed. The benefits of option one are obviously the long-term savings for the taxpayers from the general fund. There's no annual payments that will be taken from the general fund, and it saves about 175,000 in loan lease agreements. I'm sorry, not agreements, but interest. There's no financial audits that are needed. It also allows for CDBG and Act 13 monies to be reprioritized, and it permits the fire department administration to better utilize time and resources rather than searching for funding for the financed annual payments. Option two, similar to option one, it saves about 175,000 in the interests. It also gains $114,000 in value by participating in the 60-day prepay program. Again, no financial audits are needed, and it allows Act 13 monies to be utilized or reappropriated. However, I did talk to, let me pull up, we received an email from Joe Pollock. Says that Act 13 funds available from past there are no Act 13 funds available from past allocations. Currently, funding is allocated for the levy, Graphius Run scoreboard, City Hall, bonds, and the MS4 Chesapeake Bay PRP. Option three is 1.5 million in ARPA, 700 CDBG, and 1 million financed. There's no real savings to the taxpayers or the general fund. The annual payments will be taken from general fund, Act 13, or grants as we're able to find them. We would lose the 114,000 in prepay initially, I believe. And then we would pay more than 175,000 in interest by financing this way. Incompleted financial audits, internal financials are not needed because are needed, but we're having difficulty being able to provide them. And then the CDBG money for everything, I talked to Skip. He said that would be a one-time payment of $700,000. So having been in contact with multiple lending institutions over the past 3 weeks, it's become quite clear that the financial audits or internal financials are needed to obtain the financing requested for this option, for option number three. The switch of the truck manufacturers from Seagrave to Pierce, which on December 16th, former Chief Killian, that's what he was looking at was Seagrave. And I don't believe Seagrave offered this prepay program. So when he changed and went to the Pierce manufacturer, they do offer it, and he saw it as an opportunity to get a little more bang for the city's dollar. So any questions?
Mhm. I'm sure, Chief. Randy, Eric, any questions from you?
Well, we've talked about this a lot. I mean, thank you, Chief. You've done a good job having had this just dropped in your lap because it was a very convoluted process. I guess I have a couple comments. So I look at it this way. Option one, that the benefit of doing it that way, 100% ARPA funding, allows us to have a reset in the sense that the one bullet point said it saves about $175,000 in loan and lease interest. So the benefit I see of paying it off would only be a benefit if we took that number, $175,000, and put that aside each year down the road. So when a truck needs replaced, we've been preparing for that. I think that's one of the goals we've tried to reach, and we haven't been able to do it. Now we have this money that would allow us to do that, but we'd have to be disciplined, and so would future councils to commit that money. And the same with option two. It's a lesser amount from ARPA, $700,000 less, but again, you have that $175,000 in loan and lease interest that you'd have to be disciplined and put that aside. And then other than that, option three is a lesser degree of that, but you still have that 175,000 to put aside. So amongst those, I guess the one question to go along with that, Chief, would be, you mentioned to get bank financing, we need either the audits or internal financial information. So it's not an and, it's either or.
I believe so. If you would, if Tom Whitmer, if he would be able to speak on that, I'm not sure. He's from Pierce Financials.
Okay.
Yes, and so I understand the question. The question is about the annual audits. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, the chief mentioned when he talked about doing bank financing, it would be, or any kind of financing, it would be the financial audits or internal information. I just wanted to clarify it was either or, not both and.
Yeah, it's either. Yeah, we actually took this to the PNC's credit authority, their credit manager, and they came back and said they're willing to look at it with internally prepared annual financial statements without the audits.
Okay.
So they would consider the credit request. So, and they understand the situation.
Yes.
By not having the audits right now.
Yeah.
They have sufficient internal annually prepared financial statements, and in the latest budget, they will look at the credit request.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Randy. Eric?
I've got a kind of bullet points of questions here. So Chief, if you could entertain me and kind of answer just the first one or two as we go, but the main thing is the contract, how that was signed, you mentioned. So does the clock reset on that 60 days once it's signed by the administration?
No.
Okay.
Now, it was basically when the administration signs it, so when the mayor and the controller sign it, it's just basically, I don't want to say a formality, but it's just in addition to the contract that's already been signed.
Understood. So from my perspective, as I look at this and I see the three options that you presented, and I appreciate that you gave us the options there. With the Act 13 money, is there any way that we could incorporate that into option two? Because I think that might be a good appropriation of those funds there, considering the amount of money that we're looking at. And then when I look at the ARPA budget that City Council had just presented, and then we as the Finance Committee just voted on to pass to the full body of council, this $2.5 million completely takes away all of our public safety dollars that we had decided that we're deciding to allocate there. So that also takes away your ability to buy PPE as well. So can we add Act $13 to that option too?
As I read Joe Pollock's email, it didn't sound like there was anything available.
Okay. Then for me, I have a really hard time saying that, yes, we can do option 1 or 2, considering the amount of money that that's going to cut in to our ARPA funding and what we see that going to. Now, financing is obviously, I think, a good solution for this. Obviously, there's payments and interest that we're going to incur, but what is the lifespan of these trucks supposed to be? 15 to 20 years, correct?
No, actually, it's more along the lines of 12 to 15 or 16 years.
Okay.
For actual useful life.
Okay. So what are we currently paying for maintenance on the trucks that we have?
About 63,000.
About 63,000 last year.
$63,000. Okay. So with option 1 and 2, we would save that then in roughly 2.5 years.
Correct.
Okay.
In mind, Mr. Biden, that there will presumably be some kind of maintenance expenditures on any trucks.
And the warranty on those trucks, though, is obviously wear and tear is not covered, but they warranty those trucks for how long?
I believe it's 1 year.
Okay.
And just so you know, the next year, well, I shouldn't say next year, but when we would take receipt of these trucks, it would lessen the amount of maintenance. I mean, yes, Ms. Mealy, you're correct. It would increase, or we would still have a maintenance. But right now we have an engine that is 6 years old and has been nothing but a headache. It's out of service right now for some issues. So, you know, there are still some maintenance issues, maintenance funding that we have to pay.
Mhm.
What's that? It'd be considerably less, which would, you know, also lessen our budget line item for that.
Mr. Whitmer, is it Tom?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for being here to answer any questions that we have. So I'm going to direct this one to you. You mentioned that you would be willing, PNC would be willing to accept in audits from the city, that we would have extensive audits, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We reviewed it with PNC's head of credit. He came back and said he's willing to entertain the request based on the internal financial statements, internal year-end financial statements from Williamsport.
Okay.
Yeah, he understands the reason for the audits right now. Yeah,
sure. That's understood, and that is, Chief. That's where my hesitation comes from. Given the fact that this process has been pretty extensive and ongoing. I know we're nearing the end of it, but I'm very cautious to get us to a point where we're either going to use the majority of our ARPA funding or all of our ARPA funding that we have allocated for public safety without a financing option as well. So I appreciate that PNC is willing to do that for us.
Is that guaranteed, Tom, that we
No, it has to go through their credit committee. It up, and they said they're willing to entertain the request to the credit committee. And so they're keeping, you know, open mind to it. So it has to be approved by the credit committee.
Okay, and what would happen if they wouldn't approve it?
Yeah, I mean, they would, yeah. My job at Pierce is I have a whole line of other funders. So as far as our financing program to our customers, we align with PNC Bank. That's our bank partner. I do have some other funders I can check, you know, if PNC is not willing to do it. But PNC's indicated that, you know, they're willing to, there's enough there with the down payments and everything there's enough there that they feel they can take it to their credit committee and have a high probability of approval, but you never know.
Okay.
But I would assume that that's always the case when one's looking for lending, correct, Mr. Whitmer?
So I'm sorry.
That's always the case when one is looking for lending. It may or may not be approved.
Right. Yeah. You know, we can't commit. We can't commit. But there's enough there that they saw, and they know Williamsport very well because PNC's, you know, dominant in the state of Pennsylvania. So there's enough there that they feel they have sufficient to look at it in, you know, their credit committee and see where it goes.
Got it. Thank
That
you.
affect interest rate at all because we don't have those audits done and it would be an internal? Would we be considered more of a higher risk?
The interest rates they quoted are normally what they do is they look at your credit ratings.
Mhm.
So that's how they base the interest rates off of. And so they took a look at your public ratings, and that's how they base the interest rates off of.
And just for the record, what were the interest rates they quoted us? That's not included in this documentation.
Yeah, what we're looking at here is it's a 7-year lease term, and the interest rate it's tax exempt, and it's 3.26%,
Okay.
and that's tax exempt. And so just so folks know, with the long lead times right now at Pierce Manufacturing, the structure of the deal is if you order in, or if you execute the lease in March, there'll be an interest-only payment due in March of 2023 for 12 months, and then the first lease payment would be due at delivery of the apparatus, which is projected in October of 2023. And then each subsequent payment is going to be in October, the following Octobers, until the maturity is in October of 2029 is when the last payment will be.
Got it. At which point we'd be about halfway through the useful life of the vehicles, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just to this of the city, I mean, we could go up to 15 years on financing. We're from 2 to 15 years on the financing for tax exempt municipal lease purchase.
Got it. And just to go over some of the basic numbers, if we were borrowing $1 million, the annual payment then over 7 years is $175.
Well, actually, you know, the $1 million, I'm gonna have to run again one more time. I can calculate it really quick. We ran 1.2 million.
Okay.
1.2 million, the payment was 191,959.05.
Got it.
And actually kind of back into that and give you a ballpark of what the, based on $1 million would be.
And I'm Kim Simon from PNC. I'm on
Yeah.
the call too. I can run the numbers for you, Tom. I got still have.
Yeah, Kim, good. Yeah, Kim's our PNC banker, so I'm glad you're on, Kim.
I do want to clarify too, one thing, and I think I told it to the chief, but it wasn't until like right before the meeting was the benefit of the discount is still there. No matter how you do it, as long as we put the money, give the money to Pierce at time of order, we would earn the offer of the $114,000 in discounts. So I'm not sure if any of those numbers came into play at all into the calculation.
And as long as we could enable the lending within that, but by the end of March.
Correct.
As long as
I believe
as
that's
long-
a time frame. I believe
Payment.
that's, I don't know when the contract was signed, but
Yeah.
as long as that's the offering of the prepaid discounts and that's calculated from Pierce, that we would, the city would take advantage of the discounts.
I guess what I'm,
So-
the deadline is 31st. So we would
Okay.
need to submit to you internal financial statements prior to that deadline. They would need to be reviewed by your committee, correct?
Yeah. Right. And
then-
I would need, and I would definitely need some time to do that. So the sooner the better that we can get that looked at. But the payment does reduce down to $159,965.87.
Got it. But so if I'm, hang on though, if I'm right in my calculations, then with the 1.2, for instance, that 1.81, we times it by 7, correct? 7 payments of 181,000?
Correct. But there is an interest only payment also. So all in, for the interest on $1 million, all in with everything, it's 152,361.09 interest charges.
Got it. And the interest then on 1.2 was 175, correct?
And then I'm not, let's see, hold on a second. The $1.2 million was a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
I'm just calculating again. 182,833.35. So like $30,000 maybe difference.
Excellent.
And
Thank-
there's a lot of different ways to put this together. Is your year end December?
Yeah. The city
Okay,
runs it.
so there's ways we can skin this cat a little bit thinner too by adjusting the payments to your budget year as opposed to, waiting halfway through the year before you make a payment when you budget in January, February. It's like that. We could save a little bit of money. Just something to think about.
Okay. Well, I think that frankly, those decisions are probably best left to our financial department because they're used to know when we have cash flow for one thing, and also, know what the value is of cash flow early in the year versus later in the year and whether
Right.
worth a slight difference in dollar amounts. Unless Mr. Pavlak, you want to speak to that now, but I'm going to assume you'd rather review the documentation first.
I would say no payments before April or May till taxes start to come in, because it's either borrowing or waiting here or drawing down on a tax note or something to cover the payment. So you're getting hit either way.
Yeah.
The earliest to make a payment in the calendar year would be April or March, or April or
May. Okay, got it.
Got it. Okay. I was thinking you might feel that way, Mr. Pavlak. Okay, then, so then some follow-up questions on my end. Or I guess follow-up considerations for Randy and Eric here. Eric, if we did want to fund the entirety of the purchase through ARPA funds and community development, I don't think there's a snowball's chance that we're interested in funding the entirety of if there are community development funds available. I highly doubt we want to fund the full 3.2 through ARPA. But to me, then the consideration, gentlemen, becomes we could potentially shift funds, some of the unallocated from fiscal relief down to public safety to get us to that 2.5 number if we were interested. Theoretically, it would open up space in the city's budget because, of course, we wouldn't have 100 and it would be closer to that 181 number, frankly, a little bit annually. However, Mr. Allison, since you want to see us allocate the cost of a new vehicle so that funding is in place by the time we need to purchase vehicles again in 16 years, that there isn't any space. You know what I mean? We're still getting $200,000 a year out of the fire department. It's simply escrowed for future purchases. But since we can all agree that would have been the wisest decision one way or the other, that is to say that even if we authorize borrowing and we take $180,000 from the fire department annually to cover the borrowing for the trucks, we should still be escrowing funds for purchase of future vehicles. The one way to look at it, Mr. Biter, if we were to try to fund this entire thing out of ARPA, is that we are having an annual effect over the course of the next 7 years on the city's budget per lost revenue. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or fiscal relief?
Absolutely.
Right. So there's a bit of a 6 of one, half dozen of the other argument there. And we are saving ourselves, of course, about $180,000 in interest, as well as saving a whole bunch of running around for the finance department and the fire department, trying to get us this funding under somewhat extraordinary circumstances of us not having existing fiscal audits for 2019 and 2020. So to my way of thinking, as my brain works slowly here on Tuesday, I am talking myself around to thinking that perhaps we would be better off to be attempting to fund 2.5 million out of ARPA, because it is effectively the same thing. But I am open to hearing from the two of you what your thoughts on this are.
Well, doing that, so as we go through the math, the 175,000 in interest that we'd save, and Chief, if you can indulge me again, the number in maintenance that you're paying?
About 63,000 a year.
63,000. So we're at roughly 225, we'll just say, for maintenance and interest that we'd save over the course of that time frame.
Right.
I think everybody can get behind saving those dollars there, but ultimately, whatever we decide today, I think a much more in-depth discussion is going to be warranted between the other members of council. And I would like to know if the administration has any thoughts as to what they thought about this funding process, if they reviewed any of this with the fire department beforehand. And ultimately, Chief, I know we had just had a very brief discussion about the trucks and the change in tactics that you're going to have to make. Is that still something that you are satisfied with when we're going to purchase these trucks with a 12 to 15 year lifespan? Is that going to alter too much for the city fire department going forward?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we had made some discussions, but we cautiously, we didn't want to bring it really up during the meeting because of just more stuff to the fire, if you will. So what we're looking at is after we have about a year that we're able to make changes to the trucks. And one of the things that we were looking at is adding a pump to the tower truck. That will cost, in addition, $86,000 on top of what we're already paying, but that gets paid at the end when we take receipt. So in 20 to 21 months, that's when that money would be due. My understanding is everything else, the way the salesman explained, these trucks are like a vessel. So we are able to make some changes, modifications to compartments, those types of things to better suit our needs.
And to answer your question, Councilman Biter, yes, we've been working extensively with Chief Ungst and Chief Lucas on these items. And I would agree, I think we are on Chief Ungst and Chief Lucas, myself, are in agreement that option 2, as Councilwoman Mealy put, is the best one given our current situation with part ARPA funds and then part CDBG. We did check, so Skip and Chelsea have checked with our CDBG our HUD consultant, and they were okay with us using these dollars, and it's 700,000 or so related to the fire apparatus, and so that's eligible use. And again, I think given the situation, and I commend Chief Ungst and Chief Lucas for the time they have spent on this the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's been a lot of time with the misinformation, or I guess the misinformation from the previous, even that what was provided to me and council, and sort of the convoluted situation that got us in. They've done a great job getting us out of it, and now we're all bringing this back in front of you collectively, so we all are on the same page. We all hear the same message, unlike before, where we sort of were hearing I think different messages across the board. So I apologize for that previously, but Chief Ungst and Chief Lucas are doing a phenomenal job getting us back on the same page. And I would agree, as I said, with Councilwoman Mealy. I think at this point, option 2 appears to be the best option, but we have spent a lot of time. We'll continue to look into it. I know Act 13 was brought up. I was working with Joe Pavlak this morning, even on Act 13, and trying to look some things. If there's any money that we can free up there with Act 13, we'll get that in front of council as well. Thank you.
Great, Derek. Thanks. We'll look forward to well, we'll hope that we turn up some money, but Act 13 has been shrinking, and I think our needs for it have been only increasing. So I don't know that any of us would be surprised to find out there wasn't any extra funding there. But by all means, if you get good news by Thursday, let us know. But yeah, I guess the way that I am conceptualizing this is, if we are taking $180,000 out of the city's budget over the course of the next 7 years to pay for a loan to purchase this vehicle. Meanwhile, we are supplementing the city's budget over the next 4 to 5 years, bare minimum, with lost revenue funds. It's effectively robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's 6,000 of the other. So we might just as well save ourselves the interest by taking all of it out of ARPA funds at that point. But I would still agree, Randy. I think the number to me needs to be a minimum of $200,000 set aside in the fire department budget annually to cover the purchase of new vehicles in 15 to 20 years, frankly. And even then, we're still going to be under because we know that costs will increase.
Right. But it's a lot more tenable situation that way.
Yeah. But I would still encourage us to set aside funding, to escrow funding for future vehicle purchases. When, despite the fact that we will be fully funding this purchase with ARPA, because we should not expect there to be another slew of ARPA funds in 15 years. And if they are, then we're all in a whole lot worse trouble.
Although I probably won't care at that point, but
yeah, you made me pass better. I'll still be stuck with it. Not in the city. Anyway, and some future council members will be cursing our names.
Exactly. I wish somebody had thought about us like that.
But yeah. To Mr. Biter's point, that means that the discussion around the ARPA budget obviously needs to be updated a bit if we are shifting funding already, deviating already from the budget that we just approved earlier in this meeting. Mayor, when we are proposing deviating from that budget, we also obviously need to incorporate the $12,000 that the administration is just about to ask us for later in the meeting related to an electrical panel at Memorial.
Yes.
So if we are looking at updated spending and the administrative proposals for updating the ARPA budget, both of those items need to show up. Okay, are there, thank you very much, both Tom and Kim, for joining us and for helping to clarify some of the financial numbers. It was exceptionally helpful to have that information on board for the meeting. Even if it does mean that we have likely decided not to finance anything, but it was really, really useful to have the people with the numbers here. Yes. Does anyone have further comments related to this item? Okay, the one additional comment that I would make for the benefit of both the mayor and Chief Ongst is I am understanding from the chief that the fire department is contemplating an ad alternate to the existing contract for the truck to the tune of $86,000. If that is something the administration is contemplating, that would take us over the 3.2 that we are authorizing with this resolution. That item would need to come back before council for a vote.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I would recommend that we provide adequate time for consideration and debate around that item. That is to say that it should not come to council immediately before we have to place the order for the ad alternate. That's not a criticism of this process. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I would not expect that to sail through. So you want to get it to early enough that there can be some discussion of alternatives and et cetera, et cetera. I'm sorry, that's a little bit more like I was scolding you than I meant it to. But I think there will be some discussion, and I would suggest that it not be the sort of thing that we need to pass on Thursday so that the funds that we can send the check on Monday or something, because we will need to figure out where that money is coming from, and I don't know, and I'm guessing you don't necessarily either. So we'll need to think about that. But if there are no other comments then I would hear a motion. I would take a motion on this.
I'll make a motion, we pass it to the full body of council with no recommendation, given the discussion here and the discussion we're going to have Thursday night. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of give and take.
Yeah. You are a wise man, Randy. Would you be willing to second that?
I will gladly second that.
Okay. All right, then let's hear the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thanks, gentlemen. All right, and now we are going to attempt to speed up the remainder of this meeting because we are getting off to the window where we eat into Public Works time. But although none of us are members of Public Works, correct?
Correct.
Man,
Right. So now we don't need to worry about delaying one meeting so the other can run.
yeah,
All right. Item number 4 on our agenda is a resolution authorizing the partnership between the city and Rec Desk for purchasing recreation software. Ms. Drummond?
Hello, everyone. So what you have in front of you is a recreation software. If you recall, probably about 4 or 5 years back, we did have a recreation software. It didn't fully function the way we needed it to. This software will allow us for the recreation department to go into the 21st century of everything being online, being able to accept payments online for summer camp, pool passes, pool admission, pavilion rentals, as well as all of the events that the city hosts. So vendor applications will be on there, be able to process vendor fees. You can go on, there'll be a calendar where you can look to see if a pavilion's available. I don't keep, everything is paper here, so I don't keep everything with me. So if somebody calls me and I'm not in my office, I don't want to double book anything. So this software allows us to do everything in this department from a mobile device or a handheld, a computer, tablet, anything of that nature.
It certainly sounds like an improvement.
Yes.
Randy, Eric, do you have any questions?
No, any way that makes it easier for individuals to access and become part of those city programs is going to be a benefit to the city and to your department. And just, I think you hopefully will see more engagement throughout these programs then, because we all live on these devices nowadays. So I think it's an excellent option for us.
Thank you.
Randy, do you have any input?
yeah, I'm sorry. I had to call Bonnie. After we're done with this, I'm gonna jump over to Public Works. Yes.
Well, apparently, Randy, it sounds like Chris can't start Public Works until we finish anyway.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So we're still holding up Public Works one way or the other. Let's go for it.
No, it's an excellent, I mean, I love it. I love the concept, or not the concept. I love the tools that it's going to provide for recreation. I mean, it just hits all the buttons for me. The way, it's going to be a place where people can find all the information they want and need. It's going to be centralized, updated. So, and it's going to make it so much more efficient for Kayla to do her job. So I think it's a win-win.
Look, I've had a meeting with Chris. Myself and Chris have also met with Zoomed meeting with Rec Desk. We went over everything. Everything seems to match our system we have now. And even if the city were to change or update its system, it would still correspond to it. It'd just be an additional fee later on. But I have that in my budget to be able to pay for that if that time occurs. This link will also go on our current webpage. So like when you go to the city's page webpage and click recreation, this link will be there to take whoever clicks on it directly to this page, which will mimic the city's page. So it's not much different. So they don't look like they're going to a completely different location,
Right.
To be able to find everything that they need.
Very similar to how we did with Crime Watch for the police department.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to clarify, who is building the site out?
Rec desk that will do everything, and between myself, Rec desk, and Chris will make sure everything is incorporated, everything is connected simultaneously, so there is no issues.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just there's not like an implementation fee in the contract.
No, it is a flat 5,200 for everything. An additional 1,200 would be if the cities changes their software or how they process payments, then they Rec desk would have to transition to the new software.
Okay, got it. So, but they're taking care of the credit card processing for us, correct?
Correct.
So, sorry, and maybe this is a better question for Chris, I'm not sure. But yeah, the data import, the GIS import, and the financial extract, when would those impact us?
Did you say when?
Like I'm just trying to figure out what those items specifically are. So under what circumstances, like if they're doing the credit card processing, then we're not going to change the way we accept payments because they're the ones accepting payments, correct?
At this current moment, yes. I'll say if it changes, it would only change if the city were to change how we accept payments.
Got it. Okay, but you mean how we accept, if we were to want to accept payments ourselves online instead of having them as the credit card processor?
Correct.
Okay. And there's no fee associated with credit card processing up to $500,000 annually?
Nope, everything is at 5,200. There's nothing additional, nothing separate.
Okay. Got it. Well, aside from transaction fee over 500,000, but I don't think we're likely to get, I don't know.
No.
No. I don't think that's
It'd be
amazing.
nice if it was.
Yeah, that'd be a good problem to have. Yeah.
I know. How many, do we have any idea how much money we annually process through the recreation department currently between vendor fees and facility reservations, et cetera?
I do not. The facility rentals was never kept like on a record as a spreadsheet, so I don't have that to even reference back to. As far as vendors for events, I can reference back to that if you'd like me to.
No, it doesn't really matter, but I'm assuming that we're under $100,000 even with pool and everything. So yeah, it would be great to see us grow, but even if we grew, we're not about to get to that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so they are doing the website build out. Chris is supplying the data. Is that, I'm just trying to figure out how we're breaking it down. Like whose time is going to what to make this happen?
Basically, if there's anything that they need to tie back into us for whatever reason, I will help facilitate that.
Got it.
But it's pretty much a standalone package by itself.
Okay. And so all that we need to provide them with is our existing forms?
Yes.
Okay, understood. Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it should be a huge asset to the city.
Absolutely.
And it seems as though they're pretty much the leader in the field, correct, Kayla?
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously there are many happy users out there and no reason to expect that we will be an unhappy one, correct? All right. Okay, well, this is exciting. Speak to me about, are there existing costs in your department that we will be able to reduce when we add this as a cost in your department?
So currently, I can't say currently, prior to COVID, everything, we can't take anything other than I can check or money order in here. When it comes to our summer camps, people come cash in hand, which I don't like cash only because it's offsite. I don't even like it in my office. Things get misplaced, anything of that nature. So I personally would then have to go to a gas station or a bank and purchase a money order myself.
Okay. Oh, it's a pain in the butt. I guess I'm just asking if we can, it seems as though this should eliminate some of our need for staff time in your department. If all of this stuff is happening digitally effectively.
Yes, everything will be electronic then. Everything will be put on paper. Everything will be time stamped. I won't have to, or somebody else won't have to go back through and make sure everything is there, put a check or money order to a camper, a check or money order to a pavilion rental or a vendor. Everything is all simultaneously implemented onto the system.
Got it. Secondary question, can people still pay with cash or check if they come to your office?
I don't take cash, check or money order. Absolutely.
Got it. There are just some people who don't have a credit card or, any sort of.
Right. And like I said, sometimes I do make an exception, but if you're going to hand me cash, then I personally have to take it out of my pocket to go purchase a money order.
Right. No, I'm not. I understand your objections. I'm just saying, I think we need to meet all the citizens of Williamsport where they are, and some of them are not in the banking world. So we need to bear that in mind. But as long as we're not refusing to take payment via any method other than our website, I think that that the website provides a huge number of services that are currently very difficult to access in the city, because you have to be in the rec department when we're having hours so that you can drop off your forms, et cetera, et cetera. I think it really enables us to provide a much better service to the citizens of Williamsport. I think I'm simply hoping that at the same time that the time that we will be saving in the recreation department either has a fiscal impact on the bottom line of the rec department elsewhere, or enables us to provide more services because we're no longer spending anywhere near as much time on these items that will now be taken care of for us through, a website and simplified. I look forward to seeing how it's implemented. Could we schedule, when will this hit the ground, Kayla? We sign the contract?
As soon as they're supposed to send me a contract today or tomorrow. As soon as council approves it, then we'll hit the ground running. I want it to be up and running prior to summer camp and the pool and all of the major events coming over the summertime.
So we're aiming for mid-April?
Yes.
Okay. Could you possibly give us a report, maybe sometime in June?
Absolutely.
Okay, that'd be good. Maybe like the second, whenever it's convenient for you, but sometime around the second meeting in June, first meeting in July, something like that would be nice. But when it doesn't conflict terribly with the recreation schedule. Just so that if we're having any issues with it, we can try and get them fixed before the rec season's over. Okay. All right. Any other questions from Eric and Randy or anybody else for that matter?
I don't.
Okay, I would take a motion then.
I'd like to pass this on to the full body council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla, and thanks for waiting around for us.
Mhm.
Okay, we have one more item. And then any related items, and I hope there aren't any. Item number 5, a resolution authorizing the use of ARPA funds to install and upgrade electrical panel and memorial pool. Mr. Livermore?
Yeah, good afternoon. What you have before you is resolution authorizing the use of ARPA money to install an upgraded electrical panel and LED lighting at Memorial Pool. The electrical panel will provide obviously new circuits, box, wiring, and grounding rods at the pool. By making these upgrades to ensure that the pool has a smooth start as soon as the liner gets in here in the spring.
Okay.
Along with the upgrades, obviously the new LED lighting we put in to promote more night swims, not to mention the cost savings that we'll have on it. The work will be done in-house with our guys, saving anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000. This was a do not exceed the $11,989.02.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Livermore. Randy, Eric?
I don't have any questions. I had a conversation last year with Mr. Livermore about this, so I knew it was very much needed and was in the queue to be on our agenda.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is generally a good thing. But thanks, Eric. Yeah, there's not really any room to object to this item. Is there a reason, Mr. Livermore, why the administration is proposing to take it, why it wasn't allocated in this year's budget? And we're proposing to take it from ARPA instead.
From my know, I mean, like I said, I just came in, it was the end of the last year's one I brought to my attention on it to where I felt needed upgraded at that time. And I talked to the mayor about it.
Yeah,
Got it.
it was after the budget was submitted, Councilwoman Mealy.
All right, yeah, I guess the one caution that I would issue, I mean, yes, we have this money right now, and I suppose that's all well and good. The one thing that I would say is, yeah, that in future, of course, we won't have this little bit of a slush fund that we can take stuff like this out of. So if we see needs arising in the city, we need to make every effort to make sure that they're budgeted for before the end of the year, then that they're acknowledged in our budget. But there's, I'm sure that we all have other costs crop up in the course of the year as well. So
No other item to add. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yes, sorry.
I was just going to say, with the donation money that we received too, when we talked about the pool liner that council approved, it was, I think the conversation was around this spring, what portion, we still have the money that was donated for Memorial.
Right.
So what portion we want to take out of rescue plan and what portion we want out of the donated money. So we still have that as well. So that's just another, another fund for council to consider. So.
If I can just jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why it wasn't put in the budget is partially because, the electrical naturally could last a couple more years. But on the PP&L side, they actually have a switch gear that's attached to the building and they're replacing that. So with them shutting down the power to that facility, it's just the perfect time, essentially the perfect storm to do all this work in one shot versus having them come out and shut the power down again. It gives us that window of opportunity to upgrade the electrical panel and the wiring within the facility while the switch gear is being removed. PP&L is covering all the costs of the switch gear upgrade as well as the lines running from the transformer into the facility, and they're actually gonna make some changes to our benefit where it's fed into the facility also, because currently the switch gear and one of the panel boxes are in where the chemicals are stored. So like I said, it was just kind of like the perfect storm. That's how it came up at this moment.
Got it, Mr. Winder. Yeah, it's good that we have the flexibility to be able to take advantage of a moment when we can save ourselves quite a bit of effort and money, by making our schedule blend with PP&L. Out of curiosity, what's it likely to save us switching the pool over to LEDs?
Currently they're high pressure sodium lights. They would probably cut the electric bill for the lights down to 1/3.
Okay. And what's our current budget for lighting at Memorial? Anybody? I don't remember seeing that broken out. Yeah.
Yeah, I am not sure if Kayla has access to it to be able to tell us.
It's not a big deal. Just curious what we're paying annually for it. I guess partly curious whether when we switch the LEDs over, some portion of this money can actually be allocated from that electrical line.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. If we think we're going to save 2/3 of on electrical moving forward from April or whenever we're doing this work, it's worth considering. But okay. Any other questions? Randy, Eric?
No.
Okay. Then I'd take a motion.
I'll make a motion. We forward this to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, excellent. The final item on the agenda is items. Does anyone present on the meeting right now have anything else to introduce for the good of the order?
Nope.
Okay. Kayla, can I ask you one quick favor before Thursday?
Yeah.
Can you send out to the full body of council a copy of the contract associated with the arrangement with Rec Desk, please?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
All right,